put up something.
Good morning, families. So good of you to join us today. We're going to get started here in just under a minute, and hopefully you have a cup of coffee and you're ready to join us.
Trying out my new background here. Santa Rosa, beautiful trees in the background.
There you go.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday.
Good morning.
Good morning,
boss.
Dr.
See you.
Henning.
All right, families, let's begin. It is 9:30 and we have our coffee and we're going to start our conversation. So Mrs. McDermott and I are excited to welcome you to another Coffee with the Principal. We also have with us our amazing Executive Director, Dr. Robert Hennings, our Director of Student Services, we have, of Instructional Services, we have Michelle Aguilar, and our nurse, Miss Ashley Caldwell. And quick special shout out to one of our parents and great friend of mine, Mr. Phil Stewart, also another administrator in the area. Good to see you, Mr. Stewart.
Good to see you. Sorry, I was on another call. My apologies. Good to see you both.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Right.
Thanks for holding it down over there. All right, parents, thank you again. We know that we've sent out some surveys, and we hope you had an opportunity to take some of these surveys. And we're going to place those links in the chat here in a few minutes. I believe Ms. Pasolini is with us, our communications coordinator, and she's going to be able to link those for us. And so we'll have those up. I'm just going to allow a few more people to jump on. Just as a
Oh, go ahead.
right, just as a heads up, folks, I am recording this for our families that are unable to attend live this morning, and so anything that we discuss here will also be able to be played back later on for those that are unable to join us. And of course, if you want to go back and refer to something we talked about, it'll be there as well. So as you're with us, you can open up the chat, and there is a link to the parent survey in the chat that Ms. Pasolini just posted. If you have not done so, please go ahead and click on that survey. Sorry, Mrs. McDermott, I cut you off.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, I hope everyone had a nice 3-day weekend. Thumbs up. Nice 3-day weekend. Anybody else drinking coffee or tea this morning? It's called Coffee with the Principals. Oh, I see a thumbs up. Thumbs up. Okay, good. I'm like, it's Coffee with the Principals. So you need coffee or tea. And the link has been added to the chat.
All right, families. So we're going to talk about our prevention plan that we are taking forward to our board for approval. And so one of the things we have to do is we're seeking input from our stakeholders. And so the survey was an opportunity for us to get information back from our stakeholders, from you as parents. When I looked on it this morning before we started this, we had about 216 responses, cold thus far. And so we'd love to hear from the rest of you. And so if you're joining us this morning and you have not filled out that survey, please go ahead and do so. And we'll have it reposted a few more times as people join in. So that being said, well, Mrs. McDermott, why don't you speak to our prevention plan thus far as what measures we put in place for our kids to be safe?
Well, we have several measures that have been put in place. We have making sure that all of our students have masks, making sure that all of our staff have masks. We've also made sure that there is 6 feet distancing between all of our staff and our students. And then also just making sure that constantly reminding, especially our little ones, to make sure that they wash their hands all the time and make sure that they keep their hands to themselves.
Absolutely. Many of the areas that covered in our OSHA plan that we're referring to today covers things from the physical distancing, sanitation processes, the the sanitation process that Mr. Arbalo will be joining us later to discuss. We have face shields as well as plexiglass screens. So whenever students are on campus, we can ensure their safety and our staff safety as well. And I do have our nurse here, Nurse Caldwell, to answer any questions you may have as we move forward through this conversation. And we want to let you know that it should be a fairly open-ended conversation, that our morning agenda with you is comprised mostly of giving you an opportunity, a forum, if you will, of which to ask your questions, to speak to us and say, we saw the survey or we didn't see the survey, and we have some questions. What would it look like if our students came back? How is the school staying safe while students are away? Those kind of questions we want to answer for you. And again, I'm going to respond to some of the things that were said in the parent survey and the questions at the end as well. And that way we can kind of address some of the bigger concerns. Dr. Hennings, did you want to speak on any of these real quick before we jump into some of those questions?
Sure. The governor and his staff released this new plan requirement just last Thursday. And the reason why we had to spring into action so quickly is the governor imposed a deadline of February 1st for it to not only be board approved and submitted to the state and to the county public health by February 1st, but also have been shared with all stakeholders and solicited input too. So not a lot of time between last Thursday and February 1st, but yet this is just a symptom of what is being rolled out and applied to schools in general right now with the state health department and the governor's office. He also had a very a prominent teleconference at the beginning of January, indicating that he's pushing to have schools open by mid-February for the lowest grades, TK through 2, to follow by the rest of the elementary grades by mid-March. Now, having said that, what he didn't talk about in his teleconference is the behind-the-scenes requirements that must be met in order for such a reopening to occur. As you know, that the state is operating under a colored tier system in order to be able to guide, who can open and who can't open when it comes down to businesses and schools. Well, because Riverside County is one of those counties that's solidly in the purple tier, they did have a provision in this plan that was rolled out on Thursday that in order for there to even be a possibility to open up a school, the infection rates in your county have to be less than 25 per 100,000 residents in the county. Now, currently, Riverside County sits at a number that's much higher than that. I believe it was 127.5 at one point last week. So the county officials do not foresee any kind of change in those numbers rolling back. In fact, they predict for the next few weeks the numbers to continue to go higher. So it is all but unlikely that we would see the county's numbers dip low enough in order to meet that threshold, in order to consider having any kind of reopening occur in February. But nonetheless, we plan and hope for the best. But we are prepared to continue on with the distance learning in the meantime.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hennings. We really appreciate you, and the succinctness of that explanation for us is very helpful. We also want to include Nurse Caldwell into this conversation, and I know that she's a relatively new face to us here at Santa Rosa. However, she has been incredibly hard at work behind the scenes in helping us not just plan to be safe, but also practically being safe. Everything from taking temperatures of staff as they enter onto campus, to tracking and recording any student who comes on campus, to pick up materials, textbook, etc. She's done a phenomenal job of that, and so certainly deserves our appreciation and thanks for that. But Nurse Caldwell, please tell us some things about how we're keeping our students safe and our staff safe as well.
Good morning. So I actually haven't had the pleasure of meeting too many of our students, but since I've been on campus since the beginning or the end of October, we've made some safety videos about proper mask wearing, hand sanitation, that kind of stuff. We've gone through the whole campus to identify hazard areas to both our staff and students. And we've completely remodeled the health office area. So when students return, we'll be able to keep possible COVID exposures or anything like that separated from the general population. And I'm here to answer any other questions you guys may have.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you, as I said, Nurse Caldwell. And so again, parents, for those of you that have joined us, there is a link in the chat. And if you just joined us recently, we can repost, actually, Ms. Pasolini, if you would repost that link. That link, once again, is for the parent survey that went out last week. And as of this morning, I had 216 responses. Thank you so much, Ms. Pasolini. 216 responses that we've called so far, and we're hoping to hear from as many families as possible. And I will say that some of the questions may have been a little more difficult to understand, as I noticed in some of the comments, and I think Mrs. McDermott, you can probably agree with me on this one as well. Some of the comments, the parents were saying, well, how would I know if it's a high exposure area? That was one of the sections on that survey, if we haven't been on campus since March. And so, that was part of the process that we have to put out there. And so we understand that it was asking some questions that may be difficult to extrapolate, but that is part of the process nonetheless. And so if you have not seen that survey, again, please go ahead and click on the link and go ahead and go through that. That being said, if initially, before we really dig too far, are there any questions related to what we're doing here in terms of our COVID response based on OSHA's guidelines and whatnot that you have on the top of your head that you'd like to ask now? You can either drop them in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask them. It's as I said in the beginning, it's a more of a free forum here for us to discuss. So feel free to jump in.
Hi, Mr. Cap. My name is Brett Carter. I've got 4 little ones for, let's see, they're in 1st through 7th grade. So first off, thank you guys. Welcome to you, Mrs. McDermott, Dr. Hennings. Haven't got to meet you guys, but happy to have you. So we really appreciate having you guys on campus and serving our kids in this kind of crazy season, huh? And I would say too, thank you to all the teachers. The teachers have been amazing. It's so cool to see them on the Zoom, and they're working so hard to keep these kids educated. And yeah, really appreciate all of you guys. I had a quick question. Let's see, what was it? I mean, there's a lot of these questions on the survey. I'm just kind of looking at it for the first time. I mean, I have no idea, like face coverings, and I'll be honest, I don't read everything that comes through Parent Square. Obviously, I'm one of the few people that showed up here, but yeah, same thing, hazard areas. I haven't seen any of this stuff on face coverings. Where is that information still available, and where would it be available at?
Well, thank you again for your question. I do want to note that we appreciate you having. You said you had 4 kids with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we do. No, thank you guys. It's a blessing.
And I really appreciate the kind words you said about our teachers and our staff doing an amazing job. They truly are working incredibly hard. And I will just brag really quickly to sidestep your question, that our teachers have all said to me, Cap and Mrs. McDermott, we are working tons harder than we ever did in the classroom to try and get our kids, involved and engaged and everything. And so, we can't acknowledge how hard they're working and what a great job they're doing enough. And so for you recognizing that, I just want to thank you for that. It can't go unnoticed and it can't go unsaid that our teachers are doing a phenomenal job. They are truly, amazing. So that being said, this plan that we're referring to today, and as far as the information, is not only in our reopening plan, but it's also available to be found on our website. And Ms. Pasolini, perhaps we could drop a link in that one just for the sake of simplicity here in a minute. When the information is in our Caldwell plan, is on our board docs agenda. And so if you look at our board items for the next board meeting that happens on the 21st, here just a couple days from now, in the agenda, there'll be a link for, in fact, I'm going to read it just while, there it is right there in the chat, Miss Pasolini coming through. She's awesome. So I'll give you the right title. If you go directly to the board docs, again, it is item 3.7, Cal OSHA COVID-19 prevention plan. That takes you to a link that you can open. And if you didn't know that we had a board link on our SR website, then now you know. And so any of these kind of things that we go to our board with, you'll find in the board agenda. And then most of those items that are part of the open session are links that you can go to, and you can get more information directly. The source basically is there.
Awesome, thank you. I think I read the reopening plan. It's been quite a while, so I wasn't sure if it had changed or if there are updates or that sort of thing. I did have one other, I think, quick question, if you don't mind.
Please.
Our kids happen to have already had the virus, and they were all fine, which is good news. Has there been any talk about? So this is kind of a hot topic question, but like, has there been any talk about vaccination requirements? Like, that will at some point be a requirement for kids, or you guys know anything about that?
I'd have to kick that over to my director and to our.
I can kind of answer that question. So they haven't really started doing trials or anything for kids yet. So if that's going to be a possibility, we don't know. I did read an article that they're having trouble even getting enough participants to start doing those trials. So as of right now, we don't have any guidance for vaccination requirements for under 16.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem.
In the circles up in Sacramento, some people have certainly kicked around the idea of putting it on the students' required list of vaccinations for school next year, but I don't think it does not sound like it's gotten any traction. Primarily because the vaccine hasn't been tested for children at all, and that being said, there was also the consideration of whether it was worthwhile for children to even get the vaccination, because the COVID infection rates are so low amongst children anyways. And so then there became, do the side effect risks outweigh the risks of any potential COVID infection amongst children? So I think that's just kind of stalled out for right now. And the focus has been on getting the general population vaccinated, because it's, the bubble of people between their 20s and 60s where the infection is is being passed on right now. And so that's where the main focus is. And it's going to take months just to get that part of the population taken care of. But still, there's no requirement, even for employees, to receive a vaccination in California. They're leaving it up to individual employers. There's been some discussion that they might require it at some point in time as part of TSA screening to be able to get airline flights, is to have a vaccination card that shows that you've been vaccinated. But still, that's just at a point of talk right now, and that there hasn't been any movement one way or another to either confirm that's the direction they're going to go, or even to say, no, we're just going to back off on that idea.
Thank you guys so much for the information. Thank you again for serving our kids. We really appreciate all of you guys and our teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
A really great question. I believe it was Mr. Carter. Thank you again for that. We appreciate you. Any other questions really quickly? We'll keep going. The conversation is wide open. Feel free to jump in.
Hi, Mr. Cap. This is Vicky Herrera. I just wanted to check in. I read the survey. I really don't even feel educated enough to answer 99% of those questions. So I kind of gave up, if I'm going to be really honest. But my real question is, I'm seeing tons of information for the little ones and for the elementary. But for those of us that have only high school students, and for me specifically, only having a senior left, it's kind of discouraging. And I would really just love for someone to say, don't plan on coming back, or give us something, because it just feels like high school. I don't know about middle school, because like I said, I only have a high schooler. Just kind of feels like we're kind of out in limbo with no information. And it's discouraging to hear. I'm excited for the little ones, but that really doesn't say much to us as high school parents. So could you maybe talk to us, the upperclassmen, and kind of tell us what the plan is?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Cap.
Ms. Vicky, good to see you again. How are you, friend? It's a pleasure to see you. So there's a hard question there, and I'm not going to dodge it. But I'm going to let you know that the seniors are very near and dear to my heart. And this last week, I reached out had a conversation with a number of the seniors, and to begin a group of which we can kind of pull from the senior class to begin discussing what we can do to make this year memorable on campus or off. I will just say, because I know who your son is. He was invited to that meeting, and he's invited to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, because I do covet his input on this one. And so, while I can't say definitively that he's not coming back on campus, or that he is very much important to me, and as is all of our senior class. Every last one, from red track students to blue track students, they are important to us all. And so my hope, of course, is to see them on campus. My hope, of course, is not only to see them on campus, but to have them walk across the stage in a few months, because it's going to go fast, as you know. You've done this with two others. As you know, these last few months, this last semester is going to go fly by. So my hope is to not only see them in person on campus, but also to see them walk across the stage and hand him his well-earned diploma in a few months. That's my hope. That's what I can truly speak from my heart.
Right, and I appreciate that. Dr. Hennings, I noticed you were possibly going to say something. Maybe you have, obviously, I'm at a disadvantage. I know Mr. Cap very well because we worked together for a few years, and I adore him as a person, and what he brings to our students. So I know his sincere heart when he speaks about not just my son, but the seniors. And I haven't had the privilege, I've met you, but not really to talk to you. So yeah, any input you could give us from your perspective would be fantastic.
So the state has rolled out 2 different standards by which schools are allowed to reopen. The first of which goes back many months, back to the colored tiered system. And when we were briefly on the red tier, we were on track to reopen. We were within a couple of weeks of reopening because when the county first rolls from purple to the red, there was a mandatory 2-week waiting period for before school, to make sure that the county stayed red before a school could open. Unfortunately, the county rolled back purple, and we've done nothing but get more purple since. So now that standard to go from purple to red, we got to get the infection rates down to, I believe it was 7 per 100,000, an incredibly low number. Okay, and we haven't been that since October. In fact, last week we were at like 127.5 at one point. And they're expecting the numbers to go higher this week. So it's going to be a long time before Riverside County goes back into that red tier. Now, recognizing that, the governor, last Thursday released this new updated plan that gave an opt-out or another way for elementary schools to be to open up sooner, but only elementary schools. Did not give any standards to allow the upper grades to be able to come back sooner, unfortunately. So this secondary standard that's allowed for elementary students to be able to come back while the county is purple is still another low number. You have to get under 25 per 100,000. And we haven't been 25 since like the end of last October. So we're expected to be a long wait even before we get to that particular number. And even that being said, it's not going back to business as usual, like things were last year, just with masks on. It's for that hybrid model in our reopening plan where depending on the grade level and the number of days a week. So unfortunately, it's going to be a long wait for the upper grades. I hope it's as short as possible, and I do hold out hope that we'd have all grades of students back on campus before the year's up. But I'll level with you. It's based on what's required of the state for schools to open. It's by no means a foregone conclusion that it's going to happen. Everything hangs on these infection rates. Now, I know a lot of people have looked at these infection rates and says, come on, 100 per 100,000, that's not that bad. There's a lot of opinions on that. But unfortunately, these were the cutoff numbers selected by the governor's office. And those are the numbers that we have to go by.
Okay. I understand, all the rules and regulations. I think for me, like I said, I know that you don't know me, and probably a lot of people don't, but my son's been there since kindergarten. So this has literally been the most heart-wrenching last few months of my job as a mom, because it does feel like the high schoolers are being left out of the conversation. When it's brought up in board meetings, it's simply, oh, well, they're old enough, they understand. And so it minimizes the reality of what they're feeling. So I guess what I really just want to know is, as a school, as Santa Rosa Academy, as a school of choice, as a school who has other options, how are we helping our upperclassmen? Because any upperclassmen that I talk to has foregone conclusion that they won't be returning just because they're not even talked about. So I just wanted to kind of voice that. I haven't had an opportunity to do that. And I appreciate your answer and your candor. But I just wanted to share kind of that position that isn't asked on the survey.
You're exactly right about the upper grades not really being discussed at the state level, because they're not. In fact, last Friday, the County Office of Education assembled the executive directors and superintendents from all the schools in the county to collect their concerns, to send them to the governor's office, because we're upset. Not only are we upset by the last minute push out of requirements onto schools, but we're also upset about the hasty standards that are thrown together, and also the lack of address for the upper grades. So the county did collect all of our concerns and did put them into a formal grievance letter to the governor's office and send them to the governor. Hopefully his advisors, when they read these letters from school leaders across the state, they'll start to pay attention to school leaders, because unfortunately, a lot of these standards that have been rolled out for schools to abide by have had little to no input from school leaders, which should probably come to no surprise why some of them seem a little off. It's because they're not getting input and advice from actual school leaders.
Awesome. Thank you for letting me know that that was happening too, because those are the behind the scenes things that we don't know. So I appreciate knowing even that little bit of information. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you again, Mrs. Herrera, and all the Herrera family. Love and appreciate you guys so much, and certainly do miss seeing your children's faces. And I can say that for all of the families here represented. We miss seeing your kids on campus. That is not something that any of us in this profession would ever choose, to not have students face to face. And we, if given a choice, I can speak for myself on this one. If given a choice, I will put my own safety at risk all day, every day for your kids. And unfortunately, those choices aren't given to us to make. So I did see there was another comment in the chat from another one of our longtime wonderful families, and I think Mrs. Bidos, I think the frustration implied in that, I feel you on every level of that one. I certainly do not want to think that your kids are not coming back on campus this year, and I just want to acknowledge that that it is painful to not see kids every day, and we do want your kids and all kids to come back to school. We do feel what is best for them is to be in-person learning. One of the comments that I saw over and over again in the parent survey was talking about, especially some of our younger kids, our K3 population, our K2 population, or for us, it could be TK through second population, of being back on campus. And I know we just spoke about seniors and high schoolers, but I do want to touch on that, because it was mentioned in the survey that they're our most sensitive population to what we need in terms of being on campus, into what we need, what we get from them in the socialization in classrooms, and abundantly correct on those things. We want our kids, but I want all kids. I want TK through 12. So I want them all back on campus, but I do want to acknowledge that I saw those comments in the survey. I'm sure Mrs. McDermott saw them, Dr. Henning saw them, Ms. Pasolini saw them. We hear you. We know our kiddos need to be in class, learning from teachers in person, as well as sitting next to classmates, not being treated like animals in a cage. I think that was one of the comments. Sort of like a zoo-like experience. We understand that. We want our kids to be back on campus.
Ms. Spidos, I just saw your comment here. Thank you. We also feel the same way, that we feel for our seniors. It's heartbreaking. It really is. We all remember our senior year, and all the fun activities that we had, and our kids are missing out on that, and we recognize that. And as soon as we can, we want to do something. We constantly come up with a plan of, okay, let's do this, and then some guidelines stop us from doing that. Or but we definitely want to. We love them. We hope everyone has adopted a senior, to at least show them some way, shape, or form that we love them. But we we feel it as well. And we're sorry. We really are.
Again, we're still open to any questions you may have, and I do also want to note that our facilities director, Mr. Peter Arbalo, is able to be with us this morning. And if you have any specific questions about the sanitation process, I know we've spoken about it at board meetings and previous forums such as this, but it's always there available for us to, it's good information for us to know. And so it's not just about masks and hand sanitizer stations, which we've added all over the campus, but and plexiglass shields and things of that nature. There's a lot that goes behind the scenes in terms of the building. And again, going back to our reopening plan from a few months ago, we talked about how we would keep in a hybrid setting, how we'd keep our kids safe, how if we do bring them back, when we do bring them back, how we would keep them safe, and we do that because of the hard work of Mr. Arbalo and his team. And so he's got a whole sanitation schedule for every space on campus, and the high traffic spaces. As again, if you look back at our reopening survey that I've referenced a few times. And again, since a few people have joined us since the last time we posted that link for the parent survey, Ms. Pasolini will drop that link one more time in the chat for us to, for those of you that haven't taken that survey. When we look at the high traffic areas, for example, like the administration building, those main hallways, internal hallways, not the outside areas, the person responsible for ensuring that is sanitized is here, Mr. Arbalo, and he can speak to that. Those high traffic areas, the bathrooms, water fountains, those such places. So I'm gonna giving him a little advance notice here, but I'm gonna kick it over to him and let him speak to some of those things. Hopefully this is still some new information from some of you here. And again, thank you, Ms. Pasolini, for dropping the link to the parent survey once again into the chat. So go ahead with that, Mr. Arbalo. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you have your coffee.
You're on, Mr. Arbalo. We can
Okay,
hear you.
I'm sorry. Something happened to my computer. Okay, I'm sorry. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I appreciate everybody being here. Mr. Cap, thank you for the introduction. Something happened to my screen, so I'm trying to find the picture I just had. I apologize. There we go. So, but thank you everybody again for being here. So with that, what Mr. Cap said, we have been since July, or actually since March, since school first shut down, just been coming up with strategies, plans, and learning as we go to move forward. Since March to almost a year now, things have changed. New guidelines have come out. The government has always issued new standards, and now the color tier. So we've had to adapt to everything as we move forward. But working with my Chempac, who is our janitorial supplier, they have been great at giving us trainings and the proper chemicals to ensure the campus safety, and also collaborating with my team. So like Mr. Cap said, a lot of those high traffic areas, and we should be sharing that out. They haven't already today, the cleaning schedule we've done for deep cleaning and also routine cleaning on a daily basis, which considers of disinfecting admin building, the library, all the cubicles, all the high traffic areas. They do get disinfected and cleaned daily. In some areas twice a day as the restrooms, where now we're looking at eventually when the students return, we have the signage on the doors of only 2 students per restroom, the signage on the ground of 6 feet apart, washing hands, pictures in the restrooms for the 20 seconds. And then also in our lunch line areas, as I saw, some of you have it, hopefully you guys seen my video of how we're gonna have the lunch area spaced out when students return as well. So, but with that in mind, if anybody has any questions, I'm not sure what you guys have seen or are still unsure of, but I'm here to answer any questions you guys may have.
I had an email question, Mr. Abalo, about
Mhm.
the Clorox 360 machine, if you'd just like to walk us through that.
Sure. So our Clorox 360 machine, we have two of them. It's from Hillier Products as well, but the Clorox 360 machine, as I stated, it's a electric static machine. I know there were some fears of it of having bleach in the machine, which there's none. It's an electric static machine that sprays a all-purpose disinfect, and it also has a small pathogens that kills the particles that fight the coronavirus, and it's a fog machine, so it has a mist that attaches to any surface it touches. So for example, any chairs that are stacked in the room, we are able to go ahead, and it has a 4-foot ratio, so it would be able to spray for up to 4 feet in distance, attach itself to the chairs, get in between the chairs. And a lot of times when you've seen people who spray and wipe, you're only touching the surfaces that you are actually spraying and wiping. With the machine, because it comes out in a mist, it gravitates to every surface, touches the legs, in between the seats, on the seats, behind it, and eats every germ and chemical that's on there, and along with the desk as well. So that's a machine that we've been using actually since last year, last May of, I believe, 2009. We bought the machine, I believe, in May of 2019. So we actually been using it for our gym purposes, as our locker rooms, the weight room. When we had a lot of students in their training, or some of you football parents, your kids come in sweaty and go into their lockers that have a nice little odor to it. So we've been using those machines in those lockers because they actually, the fog is able to get into the locker rooms from the little holes in the front of the door, and it wraps around any surface and eats those germs. And then also in the weight rooms, the handles, the weights, it's everything it touches. So that's the benefit of the machine that's been really helpful here, is that fog, that it is able to wrap around. But it is an electric static machine with a Nutri cleaner, and does not, there is no bleach product in it.
Thank you, Mr. Abalo. I think that answers the question I received by email. Mr. Cap, there's a comment, or more a comment related to a senior advisor. Would you like to share a movement on a new senior advisor?
Absolutely. And so, I hear the question or comment, and I thank you for that. The Again, I as I mentioned with Mrs. Herrera earlier, I began a conversation back in December with a number of the senior students themselves. I open it up to a great deal of them, actually, and that's an ongoing conversation that we have a couple times a month. And so I also met with some of the parents back in December as well, and we recruited a senior class advisor to help with the planning, and so once that is approved officially, then we will let you guys know who that person is. It's one of our longtime staff members, who's offered to step up in that role. And so, again, just referring back to what I was saying with Mrs. Herrera, is that our seniors are very important to me. Not just the entire, the school, but to me personally. When I was here a number of years ago, these seniors were incoming freshmen, and so and eighth graders in the year before that, and so I got to know some of them, and so seeing them now as seniors, but not being able to see them every day on campus, it hurts. It hurts quite a bit, and so. As far as what's been planned, the fall is generally time for the senior year to be based on sports related activities, homecoming, for example. And then there is usually a winter a dance of some sort, and we've had to push that off because of the pandemic. Sports, as of course for homecoming, was pushed off by CIF, and they've gotten pushed off further and further and further. And so the the seniors are not going to go forgotten, and whether they've been here for the last year because they joined us recently, or they've been here since, like the Herrera children, since kindergarten, perhaps in the Wildemar school days. They are very important to us and to me specifically, and so we want to do what we can to make their senior year memorable in a positive way and not be marred by what they didn't get. And so I just want to speak to that, and say that I hear your frustration, and we're doing our absolute best to mitigate those circumstances that are so far beyond our control. Like as I said, bringing kids on campus is what I want more than anything, but my hands are tied on that. And so doing what we can with regards to planning activities and me involving the students in that plan is what I feel the most beneficial. Some of the things that happened back in the last spring, for example, weren't as successful, and I feel like the student involvement was possibly one of the lack of involvement in planning was one of the issues of that. So I'm mitigating that by going directly to the source. And so again, I've coalesced a number of students from the different walks of the campus life. I've invited students who are red track, who are athletes, and all the different niches of our campus, a group of seniors, to have a voice in what we do and what we plan. Not just the leadership class, not just a select few, but as many voices as will talk to me. And so that's where I'm at with that plan. And I'm sorry, I see the first name is Megan. Forgive me for not knowing your last name, but Megan, that's my response to your comment. So thank you again for always being a defender of us, and thank you, Ben, for being a longtime family. And you're right, we will get through this. And so thank you for being together with us on this.
There's a comment in the, or more a question in the chat box related to athletics in the summertime. And so right now, CIF isn't even looking out that far. They are 1 week at a time at this point, because they are desperately trying to hold out hope that they can have the interscholastic sports in the next couple of weeks. It's not looking likely at all. But there is a large enough group of people holding out hope that spring sports might be possible. But I think it's clear that like fall sports, like football, it's been pushed from fall to winter, and now winter to now, here in January. Most people are expecting CIF by next week to call it and to say that there's not enough counties that are open to be able to, run those sports. That being said, when it comes down to the summer sports, CIF, puts out and publishes timelines for schools to follow on the amount of athletic conditioning and so on and so forth that can take place in the summer prior to the start of the school year. So I think after CIF gets past February and has it in play one way or another of whether we're doing spring sports, then they'll start working on their summer plans.
Thank you, Dr. Hennings, for addressing that one as well. Yes, there is. There's been a number of comments as well. I think I want to throw out there as well. There is a super secret thing happening in the chat. It's mentioned and regarding some yard signs. So we're very excited about that, but it is hush hush secret, and of course that means secret from your kids. That being said, there is also another link that Miss Pasolini dropped in the chat and a comment. I'm just going to read it again. For those of you who have senior parents of seniors, I know Mrs. Whitley, Mrs. Herrera. I'm not sure who else in here based on just seeing first names mostly who are senior parents, but for those two specifically, if you have not already participated, by putting your information in the senior in the Rangers Away video spotlights, there is a link for that as well in the chat, and we definitely want to make sure that we acknowledge all of our seniors. Miss Pasolini just put that link in there. Miss Andy, if you wouldn't mind speaking really quickly, is there a deadline for the Rangers Away video link?
Hello, everyone. No, we are not setting a deadline for the Rangers Away video because not all seniors have their final plans yet. So we want to give them ample time. We're going to be starting with the seniors that submit their information, the content first. And then we're going to try keep doing this until the end of the semester with reasonable time before the school ends. But we just want everybody to have their plans before sending the content. So we are not setting a deadline for that.
This was a nice idea that came out of discussing with staff and some senior parents. Other schools in the past have had a means where, you know, showcase video or showcase photo collage for a fee could be arranged and put in like the video yearbook and the regular yearbook. But this year being the year that it is, this is something that the school is doing on behalf of the students. It's not a fee. This is just something that we're doing just to promote our seniors. It'll be a nice keepsake that their parents can have with the finished video product. It's something nice to have. And of course, you know, the yard signs as well. And depending on how long we're on the distance learning, they're also working on some spring off-campus online activities just for the seniors. And of course, graduation being at the end of the semester, we are going to do the maximum that we are allowed to push doing for a graduation ceremony. So my hope of hopes is that the state of COVID and the amount of vaccinations will be as such that the health department won't give us any hassle about trying to push for at least an outdoor graduation ceremony for the student and parents. And so given what they predict infection numbers to be about that time, I think that would be reasonable. And I'm hoping that the public health department will find that reasonable as well.
Thank you, Dr. Hennings. We appreciate that. And again, parents, thank you again for your participation and for joining us. And again, we'll continue this for a few more minutes at least if you have any more questions or comments. You know, another question came up about you know, not to take away from the seniors. Absolutely understood. What about the eighth graders? Yeah, you're right. You know, that's part of the conversation that we're having as well, and the greater conversation. You know, what are we going to do for our kids as they graduate or they matriculate to the next grade level, whether they're fifth going into sixth, kinder going into, you know, leaving kinder going to first, if they're a a senior going off into the workforce or college. We want to recognize all of our students that are making those milestone promotions, one sort or another, and so that's part of the ongoing conversation. And as Dr. Hennings noted, that we certainly want to do everything that we are allowed to do in this. And I will say again, personally, I know I forgot to mention Mrs. Aguilar is a parent of a senior. And you know, we definitely have a few in this space. Some will be watching this later on. For me, I have been since June, if not early July, when I was handed the baton for this job. I've been thinking about my graduation speech to our seniors. It's something that's important to me. I've been thinking about the time I get to spend with them and congratulate them as they finish their journey with Santa Rosa, and so I don't want that to be taken away at all. And so we're going to do what we can. We're going to do our absolute best to make things happen positively for all of our students. But again, for not just our seniors, but for our 8th graders, for our 5th graders, for our kinders. We want to do what we can. Outdoors was mentioned, right? We have a beautiful football field that we are enhancing to, so that way we can, under the leadership of Mr. Arbalo, that we can host our games on our own premises, on our school site. No longer renting from Heritage High School to go to a home football game. We are talking about having a home field, true home field advantage, something that has been, I would say, a long dream of Santa Rosa families when they first kicked around this idea of having a football team, and a soccer team and things like that, of having games here on our site, our beautiful site, that's pictured behind myself right now, right? And we're talking lights, a stadium of better seating, a press box, etc. All those things are actually physically taking place on campus right now, in the works of preparing for that. And so it's entirely possible that if the guidelines permit us, that is where we will have our graduation. And we certainly don't want it to be 100 degrees outside, but at this point, being that we've all had this taken away from us for so much of the year, I will sweat in 100 degrees just so I can, in my regalia, my robe and cap and gown, and Dr. Hennings and Mrs. McDermott, I'm speaking for them as well. Mrs. Aguilar, we will all do what we have to do in order to see our kids across the finish line. And if that means that we've got little Mister bottles to contend with the heat, so be it. It's worth it for our kids. So that's from my heart, guys. So I just want you to know that. Thank you again. Any other questions or comments?
I got an email question regarding the closure of the school office, and so I'll address that because it's also related to our opening topic, which was the Cal OSHA safety plan. So one of the things that was occurring during the fall and winter is not only schools but businesses not following the state guidance and the local health department requirements for how they're opening, how they're serving customers, so on and so forth. And so what the state did is they went to Cal OSHA, and Cal OSHA is the department in the state government that governs workplace safety. And because Cal OSHA standards carry fines, they decided that that would be a nice way to maybe put some heft or put some teeth in the tiger's mouth, so to speak, to try to help on the enforcement side of things. As you've seen, you've had county sheriffs say, hey, we're not going to enforce, stay-at-home rules and things of that nature. So, the state is really leaning on Cal OSHA to be able to help to deliver on enforcement of, the provisions and things that get rolled out. So, as it applies to schools, there are some things that are now being required of schools being treated as a workplace. The most basic is if you get 3 positive COVID tests at your place of work or more, the place is required to close down and close for 2 weeks. So recently, we had 3 positive tests, which caused the administration building of the school to have to close. And it did close, and we put out information, to the community that the administration building was having to close, but we were able to ensure that the services, the drop off and pickup services that are needed of curriculum and food, things of that nature, were able to be maintained while the school office was closed for this 2-week period. It also requires that when you do close, that in order to reopen, everyone's got to test negative before they allow to reopen. They didn't exactly clarify what that meant because, as you know, people who do test positive for COVID can test positive for COVID for several weeks, if not months. And so the public health department is trying to work with Cal OSHA to get some better clarification guidance rolled out, as this is new and it's actually implicated amongst some businesses, including ours. It just went into effect at the beginning of January. Now, the Cal OSHA standards also applies to not only the employees, but also people who happen to be at the place of business. Now, in our case, students would be one of those people. So would parents or volunteers or even vendors that come to work on campus. They also put a requirement in that in this plan that got rolled out on Thursday, that mandatory testing would have to take place, not only of staff, but of students. Now, of course, that opens up another can of worms. Mandatory testing, we're not going to impose testing on students. We believe that parents have absolute authority there, and we will back that. That being said, all it would take is for 3 positive tests amongst a combination of parents or that happen to be on campus, or students or teachers on campus, and that would trigger a closure for 2 weeks. So you have these difficult requirements that we're grappling with, and 3 positive tests is something real easy to have happen. And that is a big implication, that's all it takes for a building to close for 2 weeks. That being said, it's not just for 2 weeks, it's for at least 2 weeks, and until everyone that got caught up in that closure tests negative. That could extend beyond the 2 weeks. So, though there is light at the end of the tunnel, we are trying to get to the end of that tunnel as safely and as in a positive manner as we can. We want the students back on campus as soon as possible, but we have these guidelines and we have these requirements that have to be met in order for that to happen. And those requirements that are put in place are mighty tall, stiff requirements that we have to meet. And we're planning for them. That's why we have this plan that's having to be rolled out and approved and sent into the state by the very short deadline of February 1st. So we're going to go through the motions and do everything that we can on our end, so that when those thresholds are met, where the infection rates fall as low as possible, to where we could be allowed to proceed and move forward, that we're ready to do so. And that's our commitment to our teachers and to our parents and students, is to get our school open as safely as we can and as soon as we can. We just need to wait on these COVID infection rates to seriously calm back down in order for us to get down to the low numbers that the state requires.
Actually, and Dr. Hennings, I would like to piggyback off that. So on top of the administrative office closing, as he said, for the 2-week period, it gave facilities the time to go in, and now we had to implement our deep cleaning schedule, disinfecting the entire building and leaving it closed for those 2 weeks. So that way no one can enter the campus, that building specifically. On top of that, we've also been deep cleaning the rest of the campus, every classroom, every office, since the closure of the administrative building, along with the other, middle school, high school, and elementary buildings and gym as well. But one thing I want to add to Dr. Hennings on top of that is, since the school, unfortunately, on March 13th of last year closed down, Santa Rosa did go 299 days without a single COVID test on campus prior to this happening. And I know from our school attorney, he and his firm, they also have 102 charter schools that they also work with. And they told us that we were the last school to get a positive test on site. So, which unfortunately, I'd never want any positive tests on the site. And we did our best to keep it as long as we could, but unfortunately it happened. But this gives us the time to go back, deep clean the school of every inch, and we are doing that. And also just want to reassure you that when we are allowed to have the students back on campus, again, we will take that measure even more in depth to make sure every student and every staff member is safe while they're on campus.
Thank you, Mr. Obala. Well, there's no other questions in the queue, Mr. Cap.
Hello.
Hi, Ms. Burgess. I saw your hand up.
Hi. A quick question for you. When the vaccine does become readily available, are you going to publish anonymously the percentage of ratio of students and staff that have elected to get it?
Well, I could say that I could say with 100% certainty, we wouldn't know everyone who would get it because people are not required to report whether or not they did get it.
Okay, I was just curious because I know for other vaccines, your child has to have them in order to be, at a public school type of thing. So I was just curious whether that was going to be available or not. So it doesn't sound like it will be, but I was just curious.
Oh yeah, right now they're not requiring the vaccine. In fact, they're not even requiring it of teachers to even get them to help reopen schools. I can share that we're roughly 50-50 split as a staff. About 50% of the staff have indicated by survey that they intend to go get the vaccine. And that pretty much matches the healthcare workers. Right now, the reason why they were able to get the vaccines out to teachers beginning last week is because about half of the healthcare workers have been declining the vaccine. And so they included teachers and 65 years and older folks to be able to start getting the vaccine last week. And people are beating down the doors to get that vaccine. There's been long lines at the vaccination centers. Within an hour of the appointments for January being opened up, they were filled. And people are making appointments in February now. So even people who have had the COVID infection are still recommending they get the vaccination. So, I count myself into the category that will be getting a vaccine when an appointment is available to me. So it's going to be some time. I think after a big group of people get the vaccine and months go by, I think other people will feel more comfortable and safer about going ahead and getting the vaccine. But we'll see what the government does. You know, like I said about an hour ago, they are still considering requiring a vaccination card for the COVID vaccine for airline travel. That's still just a discussion. Um, a lot will depend on the new administration coming in on what direction they want to go on that. But as far as for schools, it's only been talk. It's only been talk about adding it to the mandatory list of vaccinations for students in schools in California. Um, I think the governor realizes that there would be a whole lot of pushback and blowback if they were to make that a requirement. So I think that's probably why they've stopped talking about it. But I imagine at some point in time, it'll come back up.
Thank you for answering my question. And I wasn't necessarily saying people should or shouldn't get it. I think it's very individual. I was just curious if the parents were going to have the ratio on it. And I happen to be in the airline industry, so very up to date on what they're deciding to do with that. In fact, I've got a union meeting later. So again, I appreciate all you guys do and the time for today. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Burgess. That was a very insightful question, and I'm sure many of us were thinking something like that, like a question. And so, thank you for asking that. We appreciate that, Dr. Hennings. Thank you for your response on that as well. Mrs. McDermott.
We don't have any further questions. We'll wait maybe just a couple more minutes and then we will end our meeting. But please know that if you have any additional questions, you can always email us. We are here to support you in any way that we can. But thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you all.
As we wrap up, I'm just going to say a few thank yous to the people that are joined us this morning. Many of you took valuable time away from your work schedule, and I just want to say how much we appreciate you joining us in these conversation, for providing questions, responses, your thoughts, and very, very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with each and every one of you. Those of you that are going to be watching this back later on today, when we post this on our YouTube, there will be a link through Parent Square that Ms. Pasolini will be sending out with this video. And so, for those of you that are watching later on, we thank you for taking the time. It's been just over an hour now, and we want to say again thank you for setting aside your work schedule. Many amazing families represented on this particular call this morning, and so to each and every one of you, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your thoughts, your questions, your comments. Thank you to our team of amazing educators, the ones that aren't with us because they're in the classrooms right now. I want to say thank you to our teachers. On behalf of myself and Mrs. McDermott, we thank all of our teachers from transitional kinder through grade 12 who are doing the hardest job imaginable right now, and the best job they certainly can. And we're going to continue to equip them to do the best job they can, and support them in that effort. Our amazing and wonderful school nurse, Mrs. Caldwell, thank you so much. Our director of communications, Ms. Pasolini, who is responsible for getting all this information packaged out there beautifully, succinctly for us, gets it off to our board as well. So thank you for that, Ms. Pasolini. Did a phenomenal job between Mrs. Aguilar, our curriculum person, as well as Mrs. Caldwell, our human resources director, Mrs. Evans. All putting together this OSHA plan for us all to understand, with input again from Mr. Arbalo, our facilities manager. Just an amazing staff, and And no team is complete without a phenomenal leader. And we just want to say thank you to our leader, Dr. Hennings, for his guidance, his support, and everything he's done to make this team successful. So again, thank you so much for everyone. Also to the support here that we don't see all the time, and that is Miss Nichelle Conti, mine, and Mrs. McDermott's secretary, who makes a lot of what we do look and sound a lot better. And so thank you, Mrs. Conti, for that. So with that being said, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time, and all the wonderful families. Thank you again. You guys have a phenomenal day. Enjoy, and hope you had some good coffee along the way.
Bye, everyone.